well, we've seen that COVID-19, in fact, has changed many aspects of our lives, presenting new challenges as we go along. Now, while the education system has tried to navigate these unprecedented times, some problems have become insurmountable for schools, teachers, learners, and even parents. A panel of experts have joined forces to introduce a public education program which is called Phepha uFunde. It's a public radio broadcast which hopes to provide an innovative response for schools. Education specialists and expert panelists for Phepha uFunde, Professor Mary Metcalfe, joins us to tell us a little bit more about the importance of projects such as these. Professor Mary Metcalfe, a very good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us here on Weekend Dawn. I mean, ultimately, we've seen that as schools have reopened and the nature of learning has shifted dramatically since the lockdown level 2 came into effect due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which we still find ourselves in. I mean, looking at the various scenarios that have emerged, you know, it is based on the needs of the community, and it is very context-based it is based on the context of the community's needs as well. I just want to look at the distance learning programs and the feasibility thereof to date. I mean, what does it look like during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, distance learning is something that many schools were able to introduce in order to support learning at home. But that, of course, was only able to support a small minority of children who would have had access to devices, access to data, access to Wi-Fi. But it is an example of an innovation and of innovative practice that many schools introduced. If I can talk to you about the Phepha uFunde campaign, what the idea of this campaign, which was originated in the Solidarity Fund and in the Xenix Foundation, the idea of their campaign is that there's many challenges, such as distance learning, but many others, how to sanitize, how to lead teachers, that guidelines have been produced for schools. But actually, the innovation and the problem solving is going to happen, as you've said, in the very different context of all of the different schools. Leaders on the ground are finding solutions to the challenges that COVID has brought, and the campaign is giving them an opportunity to share their learning and to share their innovation so that school leaders encourage each other with their wisdom and with their problem solving.
Professor Mary, just looking at Phepha uFunde and perhaps how the program will be rolled out, who it's aimed at, how long it will run for. I mean, what is the importance of running such projects, and how will you measure the success rate of it at the end?
The success rate for us is participation of school leaders on the various platforms. The primary platform in the long term will be a website, and that website will be where teachers and school leaders look for answers to their questions, answer each other's questions, share their learnings. There will be blogs, there will be links to the official documents, there will be links to important readings, there will be a gallery of success stories. But we're driving the launch of that website with a series of radio shows, and I'm very excited because the first one is this morning. And we're hoping that many educators, many principals, many school management team leaders, district officials will listen to the radio show. It's Radio 2000's brunch with Reggie at 9 o'clock. And so Reggie September is the host. And today what happened is that the team looked very carefully at what is worrying school leaders. They were listening to hundreds of school leaders, and what we discovered was that before you even get to the detail of comorbidities or attendance, many school leaders are very anxious just about managing change, managing the uncertainty, what to do with the fact that things change every day, policies are changing, times are changing. So the first episode is going to look at leading under uncertainty. Dr. Al Witten of UCT is going to be talking to school leaders about how to lead in difficult times. And we're also going to have Magwena Maluleka from SATU, the GS of SATU, and Basil Manuel, the CEO of NAPTOSA, on the program to answer learners' questions. And the second episode next Saturday is going to be looking at anxiety. We're going to have Dr. Noni Narko from UKZN looking at how school leaders can support parents, learners, and teachers who are coping with, as we were talking before the show started, unprecedented levels of anxiety. So this has to be a place where solutions are found by school leaders themselves.
Now, Prof, Professor Mary, you spoke about innovative ways, and obviously you mentioned that distance learning was one such approach during the, as we learnt on the go. Implementing radio as a means as well. Why the decision to go that route? And apart from helping teachers, I mean, how are you going to incorporate learners and parents who also, have concerns or want to participate?
Well, radio has more reach than television. It reaches more homes. So the DBE and the NECT launched the Was a Matrix campaign, which started on the 1st. And the Was a Matrix campaign screens quality education material that has been carefully selected on television so that more learners are able to access the content that they need to prepare for the final matrix exams. Now, that's much better than assuming that they'll be able to access IT online through Wi-Fi and using computers. Was a Matrix is also going to back up with radio. So the work is happening now so that the matric class of 2020 can get access to quality content in key subjects to prepare for the matric exams, and at the same time there's going to be backup on radio.
All right, Prof, I think I just want to understand, apart from discussing the issues and sharing, some of the blended learning approaches that you've mentioned, I mean, is this also going to have curriculum and content that learners can walk away with and utilize in their curriculums based on the different grades? I mean, how is it going to be structured per grade or per age group?
Okay, so Phepha uFunde is aimed at school leaders. It's aimed at getting school management teams, school governing bodies, leading teachers to participate in a conversation with each other. And Phepha uFunde is going to have a web page, a Facebook page, and the weekly radio broadcasts. And the target group there is teachers. Was a Matrix is a television intervention from the DBE that's aimed at the matric class. Phepha uFunde is going to be looking at finding solutions to key challenges. I've spoken about leading with uncertainty. I've spoken about dealing with psychosocial. But some of the other episodes look at how school leaders need to understand the science of physical distancing, wearing of masks, hand washing, and what it means to apply that in schools with standard operating procedures. And for each of these episodes, we're going to hear from school leaders about their challenges, and we're going to hear from school leaders about the solutions that they're finding, and then there will also be a panel discussion. But what we found is that school leaders are struggling with some of the complexities of how to manage teacher attendance in high levels of comorbidity when teachers have to stop coming to school because they've been exposed to the virus, how to manage timetables when you've only got 50% of your learners coming at any particular time. You need to have more classes. You need to have more teachers. How to manage learner attendance. One of the things that shocked me in doing the research for Phepha uFunde is how many schools are saying they've lost touch with learners. They last saw them in March, and there's some learners that there's been no contact with families. The Phepha uFunde was also going to look at issues of how do you plan your teaching, given the fact that learners may not have been at school for 5-7 months. How do you plan what you're going to cover before the end of the year? How do you support each other? There's guidelines for all of this from the DBE, but it's one thing to have guidelines and it's another thing to implement them in the very different contexts that our schools are operating in. So this is a can-do program. It says, let's look at what success is being achieved by school leaders innovating, finding solutions, adapting, and all with such determination to support learners and their families at this time.
Professor, just in conclusion, I want to look at the role of teachers and even education at large. I mean, how has the paradigm shifted regarding, what we understand, how we celebrate what they do in society, and what more can we do to support them during these unprecedented times as we navigate this new normal?
Liezle, that's the most fantastic question, and we all need to be asking it. One of the very dominant narratives in society is that our teachers are lazy, they're useless, that we don't have a very good group of teachers in the country, and that is absolutely not my perception. I have the privilege of working across 3 or 4 provinces, working with many schools, working with many principals and teachers, and I am constantly in awe of the absolute commitment of the vast majority of our teachers and our principals. And we need to celebrate their commitment. We need to support them more. We need to respect their work. And we need to be constantly talking in the media about their important work at this time in particular.
Professor Mary Metcalfe, we're going to have to leave that conversation there. Education specialist and panelist on the Phepha uFunde, which is a public education program seeking to assist schools, teachers, learners, and parents who navigate through these uncertain times. Again, thank you very much for joining us here on Weekend Taunt.